Hey everyone, my name is Whitney. I'm a registered nurse, and in today's video we're going to be talking about what to do while we wait. So in my previous video, I was telling you guys all about this new move I made transitioning from med-surg nursing to ICU nursing, new hospital, new city, new apartment, all these fun, exciting new things, right? And in that video, I was talking all about how I was so excited to be finally moving on from this position in med-surg that I could not wait to move on from. But what I didn't talk much about in that video was the phase of waiting for this new opportunity and change of scenery to be able to happen. And although looking back, it was a relatively short period of time, thankfully just a few months, at the time, I had no idea how long it would be of me waiting for something to happen. So I really just had to figure out, what do I do right here, right now, while I wait for this change in my life? So just a quick recap of my life at this point in time. I was a med-surg nurse for 2 years. I had transitioned into being strictly per diem, meaning I don't have a set schedule. I would just pick and choose what shifts I wanted to work, which I thought was going to be a genius idea and give me so much freedom, but really it turned out to be a disaster, which I talk more about in this video right here. But overall, if I could just bullet point my life at that point in time, I had a whole lot of free time because my schedule was so wonky and super inconsistent in my day-to-day life. 2, I really was not enjoying being a med-surg nurse. The workflow, the busyness, the craziness, the chaos. I realized that I do not desire to do this for the rest of my nursing career. And also number 3, at the time, I was really struggling to find a sense of purpose in life. All my life, I had been working so hard in school where there's always a goal, always a class to pass, always a test to study for, always an A to get, always like something to check off your box, right? But now as a working woman, you just get up and go to work every day. Get up, go to work, get up, go to work. It's the same thing every day. So I was really having a struggle with figuring out my day-to-day purpose in life, you know? So I was really making it a point to pray and ask God for just a sense of purpose, new sense of direction, something to work toward and strive for, and just have newfound excitement in. So that was something I was just constantly praying for. But in the meantime, it's okay, I know God's not just this genie that just says, all right, there you go. I know he can if he wants to, but I also know he has his own timing for everything. So I had to figure out what the heck to do in the meantime while I wait for God to do what he do. And for me, I found that to be 5 things. Number 1 was to find joy in the present. 2 is to build to be my best where I am. 3, have an excellent spirit. 4, keep asking God for direction. And 5 was to continue tending to the responsibilities in front of me. So for number 1, finding joy in the present, I mentioned I had a really wonky schedule working per diem, and I would actually go several days at a time with absolutely no work. And it was really not great for my checkbook, but with that open schedule, I found so much joy in the quality time I got to spend with my family. 1, I have 3 brothers and 3 amazing baby girls who are my nieces. So it meant so much to me to be able to spend that time with them whenever my brothers had something going on with their schedules and they needed me to cover the kids. Or just the times where one of my brothers, who also has a weird schedule, would be off on a random Tuesday morning, and he would just come by the house with his daughter, and we would literally just talk and we'd watch her play. We'd have some Noah's bagels, and he would just tell me all about the crazy stories that he had from his week at work. And it was because of my wonky per diem schedule that I was even able to have those moments that I really cherish. And in addition to that, I realized that this is literally probably the last time in my life that I will be living at home with my mom and dad. So I realized that that was something I really needed to embrace as well. So what that meant for me was, for all of those days that I wasn't able to get any work and I didn't have to get up to work in the morning, if my parents were in the kitchen talking till 10 o'clock at night, then that meant I was in the kitchen talking till 10 o'clock at night. If my family was in the living room hanging out, talking politics, I would have my headphones in for that part, but I was in the living room hanging out too, because I realized that those were moments for quality time that I might not always have. And sometimes I did just feel like an old potato without a job during all of those days of no work. But I am so happy that I reframed my mind to really appreciate those moments. Anyways, so number 2, while I was waiting, I made it a point to be my best right where I'm at. And I really got a great perspective on that when I went back and re-listened to this really great message by Pastor Michael Todd. It was in his series called Marked, which is a sermon series based around the story of King David. And there's just one point that really stuck with me. So before David in the Bible was a king, he was a shepherd in the field. And even though he was anointed to be king in the future, In the meantime, he was still right there in the field with the sheep as a shepherd. But while he was there in the field, he was still practicing excellence. He was shepherding those sheep to the best of his ability. He was fighting lions, clubbing bears. He was playing his harp, praising the Lord. And David's great efforts in the field is what God used in his elevation. So when David had killed Goliath with his slingshot and everybody was like, "Ooh, go David, go David," David had already had the skillfulness and the faith in God to know he could do it because he had already done all that before in the field. Also, when King Saul, who was the king before David was at the time, when King Saul was being tormented by an evil spirit, they would call David out of the field and into the palace to play his harp for the king so that it would soothe him. And the reason that they would call David into the palace to do that is because he didn't just play his harp, but he played his harp well. And that point really made me think about, wow, what can I be doing well while I'm right here in Med-Surg? What skills can I be refining while I'm here in the field so that I can be well and sound when I go to the palace? And by the way, that is not to say that Med-Surg is the field and ICU is the palace. But what I mean by that is just the field being somewhere that you don't want to be versus the palace being somewhere you want to be. I just had to make that disclaimer. Anyhow, number 3, along those similar lines, while waiting for God to do whatever he was going to do, I was reminded of the importance to have an excellent spirit. So when I was at church one day, the preacher was talking about the story of Daniel, who also worked alongside a king. And what stood out so strongly about Daniel was that he worked with such an excellent spirit inside of him. And when it came time for the king to decide who was going to rule over each of the 120 provinces that the kingdom was divided into, not only did he want Daniel to be an officer in charge of one of the provinces, but the king wanted Daniel to be the officer in charge of all of the officers over all of the provinces. And that was because the qualities that Daniel possessed distinguished him so greatly amongst everyone else. And if you fast forward to the end of the story, the God that Daniel served, God, was glorified in all of the kingdom. And that really made me think about, like, wow, how am I having an excellent spirit inside of me? Am I dotting my I's and crossing my T's at work? Am I the one people can look at and say, oh, I know she has it together. I know her charting is on point. I know her sheets are clean. I know she doesn't have no MRSA swabs left behind. If you know, you know. Am I the person who can show up with an excellent spirit and an excellent attitude every single day? So that became a very big focus of mine. And I made it a point to pray and ask God before every shift to have an excellent spirit inside of me, to help me to have wisdom, help me to have good judgment, help me to not have a spirit of forgetfulness, help me to have a clear head, a sound mind, help me to walk in, uphold, and have within me the fruits of the Holy Spirit, a spirit of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. I don't know if y'all can see it, but that's actually on my sign right here. It's my favorite fruits. Hopefully it's not backwards. I made it myself, actually. Anyways, I would pray and ask God to help me to have that within me every single day, even when things don't go my way, and to do it in such a way that when people see me and the work that I do and the excellence that I do it in, God himself can be glorified in the work that I do, just like Daniel. All right, so next, number 4, while waiting on God to do whatever he was going to do, another thing that was incredibly important to me was to keep asking God for direction and guidance. So basically, I was just continually asking God, what should I be doing right now? What should my focus be? How can I use this time according to your will? And also in the same breath as asking for direction, I was also making an effort to earnestly seek him. And one major breakthrough that I had that really just rocked my world was that God literally has an entire book of his word where he literally gives us guidance and instructions for this life. And I realized that what the heck, whenever I'm having questions, uncertainty, or unclarity in life, I really just need to seek God out and see what he has to say, because he literally already said it right here in the Bible, so that should be my source. And what's crazy is that the more intentional I was about reading the Bible and tuning into church and online sermons that's discussing his word, the more direction I got. Like literally those whole 2 previous points, 2 and 3, about having an excellent spirit and being my best right where I'm at, were 2 focus points that came to me literally after seeking God out. And it really did help give me a source of direction for the time being. All right, and lastly, number 5, while waiting for God to do what he was gonna do, I knew it was very important to continue handling my responsibilities in the meantime and to stay the course on the goals that I was presently working toward. And for me, that big goal was paying off my student loan debt. I knew that I needed to stay the course by continuing to prioritize paying toward that, and most importantly, not taking out any further debt. However, through that entire season of life, there was definitely some ups and downs through that course. And I remember in that season, I had a relationship that I loved so much. And I was just like, man, if we ever break up, I'm gonna be so sad that I'm just gonna buy myself a Tesla. So although I'll be so sad, at least I'll be sad with a Tesla. Well, we actually did break up, but thankfully, I was wise enough to not actually buy a Tesla out of sadness. And although I did take my foot off of the gas pedal in my aggressive approach toward my loans, I still kept putting towards it as I took care of myself. And most importantly, I stayed on track by not going into any further debt. And overall, because I did choose to keep working towards my goal and not going backwards, I was able to completely finish paying off my student loan in the exact same month that I was offered my new position in the ICU. So that meant that I was able to pick up and move to this new opportunity at the drop of a hat. And because I was now completely debt-free, that allowed me to even be able to accept the pay cut that came with the position, which is something we'll talk about in another video. But it allowed me to do that while still being able to afford a nice place to live where I feel happy, I feel safe, and I can live comfortably within my budget. Anyhow, overall, these 5 key focuses were incredibly valuable to me as I patiently waited for God to work out his plan, which is always the best plan. Anyways, that is all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. And if you'd like to hear more, go ahead and subscribe. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.